more Switch 2 worry. The Nintendo Switch 2 has new game cards that have pretty much been dubbed game key cards. They are essentially the little plastic bits of the Nintendo Switch that you slot in the game cards, like this Metroid Prime Remaster that I have in my hand. They are the tiny cards for the Switch 2, but none of the game is included on them. What do we think about it? Let's talk about it. So like I said, these new digital game cards are exactly that, digital game cards. They have none of the game on the cartridge themselves. You slot it into the Nintendo Switch 2, and that then prompts the system to start a download to play the game. You have to download the game in order to actually play it. Many people online are very up in arms at this, and I get it to an extent. Many people are making the argument that we no longer own our games. This is a digital game. We are not going to be able to, resell, blah, blah, blah. This is not the case. Luckily, I have an article here from Nintendo Wire that shows this is not exactly how it's going to work. The part in question is right here. So key cards will start on the console or system they are slotted into. So it's not tied to an account or anything. That's really all you need to know about these. They are not tied to your Nintendo account or your Nintendo Switch system. It is simply putting in the cartridge prompts the download for the game. That is it. That means you can still sell these games, let a friend borrow these games, you can trade them into GameStop, you can do whatever you want with these games and they will still be playable by someone else. And that is not new. Many people are upset about these because they're like, well, none of the games are on the card, we don't actually own them, we own a digital version of the game. This isn't new. This is something that's been around not even this generation, it started last generation. This is a very common practice. First and foremost, let's talk about this game right here. I've got the Outer Worlds for the Nintendo Switch. There is a little warning right on the bottom of this right here. And it says you have to download the game when you put the card into your Switch. The same thing happens with the Borderlands collection on the Nintendo Switch. There are a lot of games that already do this on the Switch currently. You have to download the games. They are not on the game cartridge. Another example of the physical stuff that comes with a digital key card, it's a little different for those. Overwatch was a game that specifically came, you got a key card in the box, there was no actual game cartridge, and you put the code in on the eShop, and then you were able to play Overwatch. That is locked to your account because it's a key code that you put into the eShop versus this comes with a cartridge. This cartridge prompts the download of the game. But not even just looking at the Nintendo Switch, this happened elsewhere. This happened on PlayStation. It happens on Xbox. This is not new. If you put in a PlayStation game, I have The Last of Us Part 2 right here. This comes with 2 discs. One disc is a download disc. The other disc is a play disc. The fact of the matter is that games are getting so big that we don't have physical media that can actually hold how big some of these games are. Like Call of Duty is 150 some gigabytes in order to install. You're not going to fit that all on a disc. So you have to promote the download through the disc in order to play the game. And PlayStation has been doing this since the PS4. Xbox has been doing this since the Xbox One. This is not new. And again, I can trade in this copy of The Last of Us Part 2, and even though I downloaded it to my PlayStation, somebody else can take this home, put it in their PlayStation, and then they are able to play The Last of Us 2. It works the exact same way as the new Nintendo keycards. Now, there are pros and cons of this particular situation, and I want to talk about a little bit of each of those. First and foremost, the pro is that this gives little room to make excuses for third-party developers to not port their games over to the Nintendo Switch, because of the fact that you can now just prompt the download and you download this game to your system. You don't have to worry about fitting your very large game onto a cartridge in order for it to work on the Nintendo Switch. This opens the doors to so many developers coming in and being able to actually put their games on the Nintendo Switch system. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it promotes more games on the Switch, which I think Switch 1 did a very good job with. You were able to actually get more third-party developer support on the Nintendo Switch, but now with the ability to not require them to put their entire game on a cartridge and be able to just download the game when you get it, makes more developers look at the Switch 2 as a potential prospect to put their games on. I think this is a very, very positive thing. The other positive is, like I stated earlier, you're still able to trade these in. So if you're someone like me and likes collecting physical copies of games, you can still get these and have a game card and be able to later down the line, if you so choose, give them to a friend to play, give them to GameStop to give you trade credit, sell them online. You can still do all of that because it is not tied to an account. So that's another huge pro with these particular instances, and not every game is going to be like this. They already confirmed that a lot of the games have the full game on the cartridge. It's only a select few games. Another pro is that this stops the developers from raising the prices of games even farther. That has been a huge topic of conversation regarding the Nintendo Switch 2 and the game prices, like Mario Kart being $80. If you want to fit some of these bigger games on these particular physical media, the amount that you're going to have to spend to get a cartridge or a device to hold 150 gigs, 100 gigs is going to be much more pricey for the developers, which is going to lead to games rising and rising and rising in price, versus they can buy a $10 piece of plastic that they put a little code on, and then it goes, hey, download this game when inserted into the console. That saves them a ton of money and keeps game prices down. I think that's something that a lot of people haven't considered, is to like look at hard drives, for example. Hard drives are expensive. Look at the new SD cards that we have to buy for the Nintendo Switch 2. To have access to storage that will work on the new systems, it is expensive. So that keeps, by allowing us to download the games with these game key cards, that keeps the prices down versus rising them even further to $90, $100. That is going to help dramatically. And I think that's another pro of these game key cards. Now, there's downsides. I'm not even going to sit here and argue that there's not downsides. There are 100% downsides. First and foremost, despite the fact that it is a digital game that you are downloading, you still have to have the key card in the console in order to play it. This works the exact same way on PlayStation. If you have a physical game and you've already downloaded it, you have to put the disc in order to activate that game. It gives you access to that game license, so then you can play it. It works the same way. The problem is, if that game gets broken, if that game gets lost, especially with the Nintendo Switch games and how small the cartridges are, if that gets lost, you are in trouble. You have to either buy the game again, or, well, that's really the only solution. Buy it physically again or buy it digitally. Those are your two options. Same goes for PlayStation, Xbox, and how their discs works. If you break your disc, you can't play your game anymore. So there is a huge issue there, especially, again, like I said, the size of the Nintendo Switch cartridges, very easy to lose, especially for kids. They are very tiny and are easily breakable. I remember one time when Link was just a puppy, he would then he knocked my Switch case down, and he got in and chewed up a bunch of my cartridges. I wasn't able to play any of my games. It's not something that is uncommon. So the breaking and being unable to play the game is a bit frustrating and a huge con to these particular things, but this isn't any different than any other game currently where you, like, if I broke my cartridge for Pokemon Violet, I would not be able to play Pokemon Violet on my Switch. So it sucks. It is a con, but it is something that we already experience. The other issue is storage space. Now, I will say that the Nintendo Switch 2 is a huge upgrade from the base Nintendo Switch. The base Nintendo Switch was 32 gigabytes of hard drive space. The Switch 2 is going to be 256 gigabytes of hard drive space. However, if there are a lot of games that require downloads, we are then going to eat through that 256 gigabytes of space very, very quickly. Now, games nowadays are like 100 gigabytes, 70, 80 gigabytes. Like, they're big games now, and if we get more and more of these, we are going to chew through that so incredibly fast. 256 is not a lot. And this is also a con because the Switch 2 does not use just base micro SD cards anymore like the Switch 1 uses. It uses these new micro SD express cards, and these are pretty pricey. To get a 1 terabyte of these is, I think, double the price of a base 1 terabyte micro SD card. I believe I spent $100 on my micro SD card that is a terabyte in my system. This one costs $200 for a 1 terabyte card, and that is very pricey. So the more of these digital games that we get, we're gonna have to fork over some money in order to get these SD cards that actually work in the new Switch 2 system. So like them or hate them, the new game key cards are coming. I personally don't dislike them that much because we've had them, like I said, for the last 2 generations of consoles on the PlayStation and the Xbox side of things. This is not a new development. So for me personally, this is kind of a non-issue. I know some people are very up in arms about this. But it is just the way games are going, and I think for the sake of, like I argued earlier, that this helps keep prices down so they don't have to keep finding physical media that can actually hold the size of games now. This is a huge plus because it keeps those prices down where we want them, versus again getting up to those $90 and $100 games because they have to buy more powerful, higher end equipment in order to put in the whole game on the cartridge. So for me, I'm okay with this. It is not an issue. Let me know what you guys think though in the comments below. I think regardless of what I say, I'm excited for the Nintendo Switch, and I'm gonna get called a shill, and it is what it is. But for me, I think this is it's a non-issue at the end of the day because it's not new. It's not a new development. It is something that we've had for so long, and it's only suddenly become an issue with the announcement of the Switch 2. So, key to see what people have to say. That is going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, like and sub for more in the future. But until next time, peace.